King of love, we moving on up. I have a message from the King of love, lessons, degrees, melodies sent from above. The King of love is sent to teach. Words of wisdom are within your reach. Knowledge is a deep understanding of the wisdom of self without being demanding. The words he speaks, the melody he sings, let you know in the door he is truly a king. Disregard the appearance, seek to reach within, and embrace the King of love without fear of sin. His life is dramatic, his path full of gold. The King of love will never grow old. The words make you smile, the touch makes you blush. The seriousness of it all sends your mind in a rush. Sisters, brothers, all families, you don't hear him calling? You must be deaf, because we seem to be falling from the highest heights where we were meant to be. His music soothes and his words relieves. Listen close, pay attention. Let him take you to another dimension. When you feel the touch, please don't rush. Relax, open your mind and learn to trust. Look within to see who you truly are. And let the King of love be your guiding star. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to JAS Presents From the Projects to the Penthouse. Today, my special guest is Miss Brenda McGowan. Welcome, Miss Brenda.
Yes, I'm so glad to be here, Miss Judy. Miss Judy, so glad that you invited me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, Brenda. This is a topic that no one needs to miss because we are all affected by it. We are talking today about connecting childhood trauma to arrested development. So I first want to introduce you my good sister and friend, Brenda McGowan.
Absolutely. Thank
Brenda is a family life educator with a master's in public administration. Today, she's here to speak with us regarding how childhood trauma affects us as adults, correct?
Absolutely.
Brenda has a plethora of experiences that she's here today to share with us. I'm open ears because I got some things that I got to deal with within myself. And I'm here to learn. So as we talk, Brenda, openly, I want you to just be as transparent as possible so that we could all gather the things that the Almighty wants us to gather. But before I start, y'all, Brenda is such a special person to me because everybody know that where I came from, I wasn't always this woman that I am today. I was that young girl that was lost, that was wondering, that was trying to find herself. And during that time in my life, God had to send because I was a shepherd and it wasn't for God. And he had to send three important people into my life, in which one was Brenda. He sent those three people to witness to me about the love of God. And when he sent you all, I can remember, Brenda, and I tell this story so much, people probably don't want to hear it, but I'm going to tell it anyway. If it wasn't for God using your life, Sheila Graves and Celeste Christille, I know I would have still been on those corners, selling drugs, gang banging, and doing all manner of evil in which I was doing. But one day God found fit that he wanted to use me. And he sent some soldiers that weren't afraid to approach me because, I wasn't really approachable back then,
But we knew you because we were childhood friends. So, we had permission. It wasn't a threat.
Right.
Friendly fire. We were friendly fire.
Yeah. I can remember how, and then, you know what? It was so strange because it wasn't a press. You all didn't press me. I remember one time Celeste Christille came up. I was selling drugs out the car, and people was bringing me the money. I was doing it for the nation, right? And people was bringing me the money. And Celeste had that squeak. God rest her soul. Celeste just transitioned this year, and Celeste came to the car, and she, her voice. When you going to church with me? And for whatever reason, I
Mm.
said yes. I don't even know why. I was out there doing some crazy stuff with my life, and I said yes. And then you guys just came, and after God had to fill me and transfer me from where I was at into his light, and I got an understanding of who God was at the time. Then he sent you and Sheila, always, come on, let's go to church, do this, and I'm running the church. And it was weird because I can remember my family thought I had lost my mind.
Well, you did lose your mind.
The mind that I had.
That you had.
Exactly. I was totally transformed from that, Brenda. So as always, I give you homage, I give you peace, I give you the love of God. I thank God for your life. I thank God for all that you've sown into so many lives, not just your family, but I'm a witness, and so many myriads of people who even obtain your services to help them and their families to grow from this dis-ease of trauma. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, for you to share the many stories. Brenda, it's so much. I don't even want to start. I don't want to give it all out because I know most of it because I've watched Brenda.
Not only watch you're my prayer partner sometimes.
Yes.
You know the real me.
Yes. So Brenda is a family life educator. And when I tell you, impeccable.
Thank
and
you.
Sis, I love you. I thank God for you. I thank God that he used it. Why did it have to take 3? Do you know? It took 3 of y'all.
Well, when the devil, he come back, when he leave, he come back, he got to bring an army for certain people.
Right.
And I will say that I think it had a lot to do with how God had intended for your life to be, like where you are today. Right. So, I think that's what it was all about. It was like, okay, I need to send 3 people that she knows that she trusts and that she would actually listen to, because you would hear others, but you actually listen to us, which there's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is what we do audibly with our ears. Listening is when our brain comes into the picture. And so you listen to us.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I was special then.
You was special. Right.
I bet you don't nobody else got that story. God had to send 3 people for me.
Hey, I know some people that have some stories now. Look, I spent a lot of time in prisons, and I tell you, I would say that I have been walking with God since I was 19. So that's 49. No, not 49. Is it 49 years? 39 years, right?
You're telling your age, Brenda.
I'm so grateful for these 58 years. I'm not ashamed at all of those 58 years. A lot of wisdom in there. A lot of knowledge and experience. But what was I saying? See, Judy, what you can't do is interrupt me. Okay. All right.
Okay. You got this, sis.
Because I'll go off on a tandem. But what was I saying? So anyway, let me just go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No,
whatever you want to say it.
Yeah, I do. I have a lot to say, but I do want to go back and say that and this is about you, even as you were on those corners in the car selling drugs, doing what you were doing, in yourself, you were still operating in your natural gifts and talents. Like you rose to the top of leadership.
Yeah, even there.
You did. I mean, you can't hate on the gifts. The gifts are there.
Come on now.
Gifts will make room for you and set you before rulers and kings. The difference is, will it be the ruler of God or will it be the ruler of this earth, right? So the gifts are there. You see, just really thinking about how you brought in the drug dealers in, to be a drug dealer, I mean, you got to have some mad skills. You got to know marketing, communications, you have to know security, you got to know math, right? You have to know a lot, right? Okay. And so those are natural gifts and proclivities that we are given. So we start off with, our nature, our natural self, our genetic predispositions and, what our parents gave us, the color of your hair, your eyes, your body shape, your voice, the way you walk, the way you think. right? That's the one thing. But you also get that other stuff, you know, the alcoholism and the substance abuse, those things that are passed on to you through your parents, right? So that's what comes natural to you. Then there is nurture, and that's all the experiences that you have once you come to this earth. So that's your family of origin, that's the community that you live in, you know, those extended family members, you know, the other the church, and you know, all those things, you know, the schools, you know, all those things are used to shape us, right? And so that's what I know remember about you. And what I want to do is I want to segue that into the title is connecting that childhood trauma to arrested development, right? So everybody has some level of trauma. You know, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you know, it doesn't matter where you live. You know, sometimes we're under this misconception that it's poor people, those people, you know, it's the hunger, it's more than that. Trauma is about how your brain is affected by abuse, neglect, and by abuse, I mean physical, sexual, emotional abuse, and by neglect, I'm talking emotional neglect, physical neglect, not taking care of and getting fed and things like that. You know, the trauma of having a parent incarcerated, having a parent who is a substance abuser, having parents who are separated or divorced, or the parents aren't together. And if they aren't together, they're not working collectively together. You know, it's, you know, all of those things are reasons and ways in which our brains respond to those adverse experiences in our childhood. What's really important for us to know is that a child's brain is developing rapidly between the ages of 0 and 5. So from birth, actually before birth, okay, child's brains are developing, right, between the ages of, you know, prenatally to 5 years old. 85% of a child, 85% of the adult brain is actually developed by the time you're 5 years old. I want you to think about that.
That's heavy.
Okay.
By the time you're 5 years old,
85%. Right. And then there are these other windows of opportunity that happen where you can develop further develop out that child's brain into, you know, adolescence and then into adulthood. So 0 to 5 is critical time for the brain development. So imagine this. Imagine you have a child and, you know, you're doing the best that you can, right? And you live in a community where there is violence all the time, right? So let's talk about when you're carrying that child and you live in a community that's violent, or you being, you know, you're in a domestic violence relationship, you know, so partner violence, or you're doing drugs, right? That stress and trauma that you are experiencing, you're actually passing that on to your child as well. Okay. Wow. The brain remembers. So a 2-week-old child's brain is recording everything that's going on in around them, even though they're not conscious of it. No, they're not even conscious of it, right? Wow. So the brain records those memories and the connecting emotions. That's where you get the term PTSD from. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is the recorded memories and emotions associated with some level of trauma. And when something triggers it, like a sound or smell, you know, you get that memory that comes back to you, right? And it causes you, you know, some kind of, you know, psychological, emotional issues that may arise or may be prevalent or show when you are triggered. Right. So, you know, what this does, you know, and you have to help me because I get so enthusiastic about this because I have been able to ask the question why for all of my life. And I just was incredibly blessed to have parents who entertain my whys, right? Like they never shut me down, my father in particular. So when you know, so I always ask the question why. And as I went through my own life, you know, I was able to connect the question why with, you know, some actually concrete examples, not in my family, number one, my extended family in my community, and then also when I was allowed to go into prisons and then travel to, and serve people in 26 countries, right?
Mhm.
I saw this consistently. Okay, so I want to go back though, because I'm getting ahead of myself, because I get enthusiastic, but I want to talk about the arc of my career, right? I want to
Let
talk.
me stop you before you go there, Brenda,
Okay,
because you
okay.
triggered something in me
I
when
know.
you said that the brain develops between the ages of 0 and 5 years
Mm-hmm.
old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you stated that at least 85 of the percent of the brain has been developed, and
Mm-hmm.
we begin to start remembering things. So I got a question for you, because I've always thought about this question in relationship to what's happening in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
And if a 2-year-old child is
Mm-hmm.
sexually assaulted,
Mm-hmm.
based on what you said, that 2-year-old child has recorded memory of that trauma.
Absolutely.
Although they can't articulate that trauma, somewhere down the line, that childhood trauma will go into their adulthood. Is that correct?
It could be triggered, because whether they remember it consciously is not what we're talking about. I'm talking about unconscious memory.
Right.
I'm
And that's what I'm
talking.
saying. So
Mm-hmm.
if a child is sexually assaulted, say at the age of 5,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it possible, and this is just a question, is it possible that that memory of that sexual assault will trigger the behaviors of a child into thinking of a certain gender, or believe that that is what's natural to them because they experienced it? Do you kind of understand my?
Yeah, so let me just make it plain. You're asking if, like, a 5-year-old boy is sexually abused by a male, if that will affect their gender
The identity.
identification. I don't know. I can't speak to that. I really cannot speak to that. What I can speak to is how it's going to affect them in healthy relationships. I can
Mm,
speak to the mental health issues that it will cause.
mhm,
As even though if the child was 2 and they can't consciously remember, they suppress that memory and it can be triggered as
mhm.
they get older,
So
right?
when they get older, I'm sorry for interrupting you,
No, go
because
ahead.
you triggered something in me, because I used to talk about this a lot. I'm saying that what where most people say, "Hey, I was born this way."
Hmm.
I'm thinking, I always, like, when I talk to people, I love people, all kinds of people. People go have trauma. We all have trauma. So most people, 95% of all people have been assaulted in some way in their lives, especially African Americans.
And we need to
Even
talk
if
about
it's
it.
DNA,
Yeah.
we've been assaulted.
Yep.
So one of the things that I've always kind of rattled in my head is that something that will cause a person to have gender identity issues as an adult because of the touch? Because you stated that the trauma begins with either touch, spiritual, physical, emotional, or mental, right?
Mhm.
So it begins somewhere, whereas the person would have memories of that thing. And so when they become an adult and they begin, or even as a young adult, you start thinking of, you start looking at boys, you start looking at girls. Would that kind of memory, I used to always think, is that kind of memory something that will trigger a person to have confusion
Mhm.
and lead them into ulterior lifestyles and stuff like that because of that type of trauma. So
Mhm.
getting to the root of trauma, what I think I hear you saying is that trauma begins at such an early age that we repress that thing. And so most of our behaviors is predicated on what we've learned from that trauma, whether we saw somebody that was an alcoholic, whether we've been assaulted, whether we've seen somebody being in a domestic violence relationship. So are you saying that that is what, because I want to make sure that the audience is clear on
Sure.
what you're saying, that the relationship from our childhood and the traumas that we repress, like you said, that we need to address rather
Mhm.
than repress it so that we can understand our behaviors as adults.
There's definitely a connection there, right? So again, going back to nature and nurture, okay, there are things that we naturally are born with, right? Those experience. So then so let me just give you a number, because I work better with numbers. As humans, we're about 25 to 30% of our nature. You know, the things that you were born with, your genetic predispositions. All right.
Okay.
The other 70% are your lived experiences.
Okay.
Okay. So that's, you know, early childhood, that's even prenatally, right?
Okay.
So there,
Even in the womb.
even in the womb, if the mom is experiencing stress, extreme stress, the child is affected by that stress. Let me tell you what happens when your body is in. And I'm when I talk about stress, I'm talking about toxic stress. I'm talking about distress, right? So there's regular stress that's motivating. You know, you walk across the street, the car's coming down the street, you get the heck out of the way because your brain said move. That's good stress, right?
Okay.
And then there's distress, right? So that's severe and perversive stress, like being constantly being beaten, you know, and things like that, or hearing gunshots all the time, right? That's distress, right? I am saying that once you experience stress, there's a part of your brain, it's called your limbic system. And in your limbic system, you know, it sends out a signal and saying, fight, flight, or freeze. Do something, right?
Fight or flight.
When that happens, your brain stem, which is responsible for your blood pressure, your heart rate, your breathing, and things like that, right? Think about it, your blood pressure, right?
Right.
So now, if you are carrying a child, and your blood pressure is affected, and your breathing and your heart rate, it affects what is going to your child. This stuff is so simple. It's so simple. If we really understood that we really truly are beautifully and wonderfully made, right? I'm going to give you another example. So let's say, we're talking about male versus females, right? The male brain has a part called the amygdala. That amygdala is larger in males than in females, right? The amygdala is responsible for aggression. Listen to this. And then you add in testosterone, which is the violent hormone, right? So think about our young men. And so we label them for things that come natural to them, right? We label them for being aggressive. We label them for, being what we call, violent or whatever, right? We label them. And I'm not promoting violence. That's not what I'm saying. But there are certain things that come natural to us, right? We talk about nature. And then when we come into the earth, we're supposed to be nurtured in a certain way. So then those young men know that while you may have a propensity and a leaning to aggression, and and those testosterone make you want to fight, right? That is not how we conduct ourselves, right? That's not appropriate. That's maladaptive behaviors. That won't work for you, as well we know, right? That won't work for you, right? But you still have these school systems, right? And let me be really clear. I have so many friends and family members who are teachers and educational leaders. So I know what they encounter on a daily basis. We need to be praying for our teachers, our administrators, our schools, and we should be fully supporting them and wrapping services around that school so they can be freed up to do what they were supposed to do, and that is to teach.
That's right.
Not to, do social services, not to concern themselves with whether or not a child ate, and they should, as humans, be concerned by that, but that's not their sole job, right? But so thinking about how, when I did work in school system, looking at the disproportional representation of African American males in special education programs, in out of school suspension programs, all of those things. When I think back to that, and how young men, about the age of 13, they were, having moments, right? And a school administrator will walk up to them and get in their personal space, and then they're surprised when they react, right? That's a natural reaction for me to protect my personal space. So if you are a educator and you understand human development, unless it is a dire situation, you need
You
to
don't
give
do
that
that.
person stress. You need to give them space.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're going to trigger something that comes natural to them.
That's a can I
I know. Go ahead. Go
girl,
ahead.
this is so heavy because just the other day I was listening to Love McPherson. She's a relationship
Mm-hmm.
expert, and in her she did a segment talking about how especially men, they are taught not to cry.
Yes,
Oh
socialization.
my God.
Mm-hmm.
So them being taught not to cry, it's almost like saying repress all your emotions, don't feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all that stuff within you. This is the way she kind of like her and another gentleman, I don't know who he was, but she was, and I said, wow, that makes sense. Because we teach our young men, you better not cry.
Right.
You're a boy, you don't cry. And
Mm-hmm.
so men are primarily taught. They're taught
Mm-hmm.
instead of nurtured in saying it's okay to cry. They're taught to repress their emotions,
Yeah.
and then we wonder why, even us, because in this culture we're taught, you don't cry, you don't show emotions. Most of us have stoic faces. We don't let people know our vulnerabilities, and we hide to prevent people from hurting us or whatever. And so she was saying that because they were taught not to cry, that all that repressed anger, and
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden they blow up.
Yes.
So that's what you're saying. That's what
That's
that
right.
comes from.
Well, and so that's a good segue into the arrested development part, right? So arrested development really speaks to the stages of human development we all go through. So every 2-year-old says no, every 3-year-old flipping the lights on and off. Every what's another stage of development? You have adolescence where our friends are very important to us. Then we have early adulthood, and then you have late adulthood, and all of those things. So we all go stages of development. When there is distress, extreme trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
That trauma can arrest that development
Mm.
where you are, right? So think, using your example of how we have socialized the boys and the men in our community, and this is worldwide. I'm not just talking about African men, I'm talking about the human race. How we
Right.
have socialized our men not to feel or not to express their emotions, right? So they're suppressing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself is an example of emotional arrested development,
Wow, Brenda.
right? And it becomes a powder keg, right? That it's got to come up. It's not going to go. We do this exercise in my class, in my training, about your feelings and how suppressing and repressing your feelings is like standing on top of the mattress. How when we were little kids, we used to jump on top of the
Yeah.
mattress, scream,
Yeah.
and jump
Yeah.
up and
Yeah.
down. So it's like jumping on top of that mattress, right? And you go, suppressing those emotions and those feelings is like when you jump up from that mattress, right? You're catapulted into the air. That's the fun part of jumping onto the mattress, right?
Coming down.
It coming down. When we suppress our emotions, that's exactly what it looks like, right?
Mm.
That it's going to come up and it's going to come out, right? So let's say let's talk to let's address some other stuff. Some of these things that we really hold true in religious communities and in communities of color. And when I say communities of color, I'm talking about African American people, Latin American people, and religious people in the South. Like, we reserve the right to beat our kids. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah.
The right to violently beat our kids,
Yeah.
right? But then when somebody else does it, then we want to fight them, or we want to file a lawsuit, right? We want to do that.
But what are we teaching?
Violence is violence, no matter who administers it, right? And
Right.
as a parent, our children have some basic needs that we must meet, right? The need for love, to be safe and secure, right? Those are all basic human needs that our children rely on us to provide for them, right? And when we gravitate towards, or when we default to the corporal punishment, like what our parents experienced and what they gave to us, right? Like, let's get
I
real,
was about
right?
to say, I was about to say, Jackie Dunwoody did play.
Listen, I tell my kids, don't you bring up Rosalie. Rosalie's my mother. You remember Miss Rose? Right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Miss Rose was, considered a geeky one. My mom was a little touch, right? She would get with you. Okay, she would.
Cynthia, David, y'all.
Best mother in the world, loved me, taught me business.
Well, let me add to that, Jackie Dunwoody too.
Yes, taught me how to do business, how to be a powerful woman. How to smile. My mother taught me so much. She taught me how to sew, how to build stuff, how to decorate my house, how to take care of my husband, how to take care of my children. My mother taught me a lot. And she taught me to love myself. She always used to tell me, little black girl, don't you ever say what you cannot do. My mother used to tell me that all the time. That being said, because of her childhood trauma, she repeated those practices with us, right?
Yeah.
It was normalized. So she didn't see herself as harming me. She saw herself as disciplining me because of my behavior. That's what parents think. But discipline, when you look up the word discipline, it means to guide and to teach. And if you want to make a connection to what we believe, Jesus, when he discipled the disciples,
come on,
he didn't hit them. He used stories. He confronted them about their behavior.
Yeah.
Right? He did.
He did.
And he kept it moving. Right? Yeah. He told stories. Think about the woman at the well. He was like, girl, look. The man you with and yours. And
he did embarrass her, didn't he?
Right, but constructive confrontation is what I call it. Right? He spoke the facts. He spoke the truth, right?
He did.
But when you look at the word discipline, it means to guide and to teach. And let us stop misquoting that scripture about spare the rod, spoil the child. Because if you look if you look at it in context, you have to study stuff and understand the context under which things were stated. The shepherd, the one who guided the sheep, he was responsible for these sheep and taking care of them because that was their cash crop, right? Right? He used this rod that had a hook on the end of it, right?
Go ahead, tell that. I love it.
The neck of that sheep to bring him in. He didn't beat the sheep. He didn't beat him. He brought him back to safety.
Yes, he did.
Right? So let us stop misquoting that scripture about spare the rod. That's not God. That is not true. It's taken out of context. Let us stop this, right? Violence begets violence, right? If we normalize violence beginning in our home, when how we respond to our children's misbehavior, which is natural, right? Then when they are encountered with something, how do they respond?
That's
right?
True.
They may respond violently.
Can I share a story, Brenda?
Always share a story. You better tell me.
On the same thing. Me being a late life parent, like you said, that learned behavior, the way my mother raised us, discipline, you do something wrong, you get disciplined. But what I found that when I became a parent and with Shavine, I remember clearly that little girl, she had to be about 2 years old and she hated water. I was getting ready to wash her hair and she started going off, right? And I raising the nephews, we didn't have no girls. I was like frantic, like, what do I do? So anyway, I got ready to whoop her, and I can remember this like it was yesterday. I got ready to spank her, and I was sitting on the bed, and she was standing away from the wall, like toward the wall, like looking at me as if she's about to hit me, right? I could see it in her eyes. It was like something in that girl's eyes. I heard the Holy Spirit say, "Don't you hit her." And I got up because of learned behavior. I'm going to discipline you because you ran or you did something. I don't remember quite what it was. I was getting ready to discipline her, Brenda. I heard the Holy Spirit say, "Don't touch that girl." Brenda, I got up and almost broke my neck trying to get to her.
Because you're going to do it anyway.
I was going to, but I learned
Mm-hmm.
from that experience. And so even now, when Shavine does something, I have to remind myself that's not the proper way to teach her something, but because that brings on like a slave mentality. Anytime you do something wrong, there's going to be a discipline. And Sharon wrote in here, she said, we wonder why they have such issues of PTSD and explosive behaviors.
Absolutely.
That's true, because we've been taught something, and here it is, these generational curses that's got to be broken.
We use that all the time. We talk because we do religion really well, and we'll coin a term, and the Lord got to break the curse, the generational curses. What we have to do is, first of all, become aware.
Yes.
Acknowledge our own trauma. When I train child welfare workers from all over the world, man, they are so uncomfortable sometimes in my trainings. I say, you cannot give what you have not addressed in yourself. So we deal with that, right? Mm-hmm. And they are uncomfortable with it, but they still have to address it, because when you get in front of parents, right, and you get in front of people and you're trying to guide them, you're Department of Children and Family Services, and you're going to take somebody's child from their home because they beat them, and you go home and you beat your kids. Yeah, that's a conflict, right? That's a conflict with what you're doing in your day job and what you actually believe, right? Mm-hmm. So let me speak to this other thing too, because this is not a put down. I'm not judging, because we have 4 adult kids and 5 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. When I came into the knowledge and understanding of using alternative. Let me go back. I'm getting to I had a tale of 2 cities in my childhood. My mother will get with you, and that was whatever she had. Ask somebody. It didn't even matter, right? My father would use talking to. He would use words. That's right?
Same here.
Us down, and he would talk to us about our behavior, and he would say, "I'm disappointed in you." Oh my gosh! When my father
that hurt worse.
Oh, girl, I was crying. I was like, "Oh, please, mama, beat me. Mama, beat me. I don't want my daddy
to feel bad,
disappointed in me." And I get teary-eyed when I think about that, right? So I did have another point of reference when I was raising my children, right? Mm-hmm. But it was, and I swore I would never be my mother. So, Rose showed up quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Jackie showed up every now and then.
But I want to share this story about my son. I mean, he turned 12 years old. He going into adolescence, and I always used my father's practices until I got stressed out. Then Rosalie showed up, right? Mm-hmm. And so, he came in, and I always thought, this is a democratic, this house, you could say what you want respectfully, right? I always tell my kids that. So David came in, and he was just jaw jacking and talking back. I don't know, I might have been tired, maybe a conflict between me and Dad. I don't know what it was, but he caught my hands that day, right?
Brenda.
He caught my hands. I went, psh, and blood began to.
Oh wow, it's all right.
Blood began to roll down his lips. I'll never forget that. I still you talk about the emotions, right? With the
trauma. That's trauma.
And I looked at my son. You know what he said to me? He repeated my words back to me. He said, "You didn't have to hit me. All you had to do was talk to me." Girl, that sent me right to the parenting class, because what I won't be is Rosalie. I will not beat my kids. I remember how that made me feel, and I did not want. And I knew it didn't work. It didn't stop me from doing anything. It made me work really hard at not getting caught. Right? Yeah. I still did everything that I wanted to do. I just
did the same here.
Right. So it didn't deter anything. So it was a 6-year journey, right, before I never ever hit any of our kids again. And our grandkids, not one of them. If I raise my voice at my granddaughter, girl, she fall out the middle floor like somebody done killed her. She can't even stand for me to raise my voice, right? So anyway, I digress. Let's get back to, the childhood trauma and the arrested development. So I was really fortunate to start my own business. Well, my family had businesses growing up, right? We had catering businesses and restaurants. My parents worked and they had business. My mom and dad always taught us you always have to have something on the side because you cannot rely on anybody to make sure your family is taken care of. That is how we were raised, right? So I had my own business, and gosh, what was I say? I lost my train of thought.
No, you good. You good, Brenda.
What was I talking about before? Look at this.
We're talking about that child. You got taken away because of the childhood trauma of what you did to little David.
Right. And I was talking about that. Go ahead. Remind me.
So then you began to talk about Brenda, you are well diverse in this field. Excellent. God bless you. That's Mother Ann.
And you know why? If I don't listen well, I forget what I was trying to say. Right? You understand what's happening here, Mother?
This is good, Brenda, because like it built up.
I know what
it brought that emotion back. Go ahead.
I was talking about how I got to to my career. I had my own business. Doing family life education, maybe go back to school because people kept telling me, well, you can't be at this table because you don't have all of these credentials. So I did that. I got my credentials. I began to work collaboratively in community. We were working with the school system with, NAACP, and we were working with law enforcement. My very good friend, Elaine, brought me into the law enforcement arena and actually was responsible for me forgiving law enforcement for the trauma that they brought on my family
with David,
with my brother, right? Like I hated the police, right? And I at her retirement party, I said that in a room full of police officers.
Walk us through the arc of your career, Brenda, so that it leads up to how did you get to where you are with all your experience traveling all these different countries, working in the prison industry, working with families and stuff like that. Help us to walk us through the arc of your career so that we can better understand how did you gain all this wisdom that you given to us in a day? Because I'm truly changed like you changed. God used you to change my life so many years ago when I gave my life to the Lord. I'm changed today by listening to that because I'm raising an 11-year-old.
Yes.
And Shavine is going through a period of where she's changing. And when I say something to her, her mouth, and I have to remind myself, you are not Jackie, be more of James. You know what I'm saying?
You better ask yourself, right?
I have to remind myself because I know at one point in my life, I had zero tolerance for anything. I was just so high strung, and having a child and raising a child has taught me different levels of how to overcome the old Judy and try to be something, to be an example, because the whole key of God blessing us with children is for legacy. And I don't want to leave her traumatized when I leave this earth. I don't want to leave her traumatized and not knowing how to navigate. I want to give although everything wasn't healthy in my childhood, but it was good because we had one thing I can say about my childhood, even with the normal traumas that's associated with going to school, with being around people, socialization, and all those other things. We had that family. My mother and father, just like we lived on the opposite ends, but we had that living in the projects. We had that family structure. We had that we got. You know what I'm saying? So the trauma wasn't as much in the home. Most of my trauma that came was when I explored outside. and I saw things that I never saw before. You know what I'm saying? The only traumas that I saw
are those protective factors, right? So you have trauma,
mm-hmm.
right? And trauma is minimized or mitigated when you have those protective factors. So family support, social connections, mentor. Let me again. Healthy family support, healthy church relationships, healthy mentoring relationships, right? Those things mitigate that trauma, right? We talked about sometime I remember. So anyway, I want to go back to your daughter because you and I laugh all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, whatever you create, you got to live with before they go away, right? Because I tell you that I have four kids, right? Yeah. So all this liberating stuff I taught them and democratic stuff when they got to be teenagers, yeah, I had to deal with that, right? Yeah. And it was a struggle, but I don't regret. I'm very grateful that I learned. So I'm going to go back to, you were asking me a question about how I got here. And the first thought I thought is my career began when I was 8 years old, and my father used to make me sit down every morning and read Ann Landers' column to him.
Oh my God. I used to read that.
My dad I used to make him a cup of coffee and we would sit down and he would get the newspaper and have me read Ann Landers' column. He was very intentional. I would say that it also happened when he would take us to all of the segregated communities around Chicago so that we could learn about other cultures and always remain curious about cultures, right? Mm-hmm. I will say that, when he would take us to all the museums up and down Lakeshore Drive and to the Buckingham Fountain after we get Lawrence, I will say that my career began when my father and my mother invested in us and told us that education is a high value in our family and we have expectations that you will obtain. So that was very clearly stated every Sunday when we sat down at the dinner table together and we learned how to use forks and knives and spoons and eat and mouth closed, right? So that I say that prepared me for the career. Now, when I got older, I went to college in Louisiana. I have absolutely no credits to show for because I party like a rock star in New Orleans. So I came back home. I gave my life to the Lord. I'm being real because
be real.
I'm just being real. So when I gave my life to the Lord, then I could settle down and I started back at school at Chicago State University. So I originally started to get my degree in business because we have businesses. So of course I want to do business. But then when I left Chicago and I was still trying to understand my family, the families that I grew up with in trauma, I went back. That's when I got my degree in family life education. In the process of that, can I tell you what I did? I volunteered for everything. People really underestimate the value of volunteering.
Wow.
I learned a lot sitting at that table, giving of my time. Knowledge is a resource.
Yes, it is.
And I learned how to sit at that table. And I'm forever grateful for the people who, my mentor, my dear, dear friend, Elizabeth Odell, she opened the doors for me. And she said, I'm going to bring you in, but you better not embarrass me. Don't that sound familiar? I was accountable to Miss Liz, and so she brought me along and I was volunteering and everything. And then I did a lot of work with the school system, worked collaboratively in a small town in Michigan. Eventually, if you look on the Michigan website, the state of Michigan website, you're going to see an, what is it called? Office of Early Care and Education. I was part of a movement that eventually established that office in Michigan, right? Wow. And I started off as a volunteer. Okay. So then we moved to Georgia, and I thought I was getting ready to continue my business and all of that. The Lord set me down, and I sat still for a little while, and then I started working for a parachurch organization called Prison Fellowship. I think this is where the Lord really showed me the extent of trauma and his ability to rescue people, to transform their mind, their heart, their experiences, teach them, and use them for his good. I saw it. I mean, I'm talking mass murder. I'm talking people like, I wasn't scared because I'm from 95th Street.
Right. We ain't scared of nothing.
Family, cousins, I wasn't afraid of them. And they knew that too, right? I was approachable, right? And they couldn't threaten me. I wasn't threatened. But what I did speak to them about is, them getting this knowledge. And I remember I did a parenting class there, and it was graduation time. And, it's a lot of men in prison who have children. And once they sit still and think about their life, their desire. So if there's anybody out there who has a father or a mother in prison, I'm telling you, the desires of their heart is to restore that relationship with you. They so regret the decisions that they made that took them away from their kids. I sit in a room full of brothers. I don't know. We don't even ask what they did, right? And all they doing are right mentoring programs and what they want to do when they come home. They once they sit still.
Brilliant mind.
Brilliant. I walk out of prison. I said, "There's gold in them their heels. There's gold.
Yeah, there's gold in
we got to go mine for that. First, we got to prevent them from going there, but that's a whole nother conversation. Right. But we got to go and we got to mine that gold, right?" So anyway, that was that experience, and I moved on to another organization, and that's when I began to work internationally. And I would go to countries where I couldn't even speak the language. And I would connect with people, and eventually I had to travel with a translator, right? So, I have traveled many places. I think I've been on 4 of the 7 continents. I've been 7 continents. I've worked with people in 26 countries. I have of late, with my own business, Family Education and Development Services, have been able to train people in delivering an evidence-based, trauma-informed, culturally responsive, family-centered education program. And I've been able to do that in those 7 countries and in other languages, right? I had to have a translator. They didn't speak a lick of English. So that's my career. The work that I'm doing right now, I am so, so grateful. When I tell you, it feels so good to be at home in your office and turn on your computer and be able to share knowledge with people around the world, not have to get a clock, not have to be concerned with, am I valued, do I got to watch what I say, and, all the threatening behaviors you experience when you work at these places and you walk in authority and you know you have authority and they come for you, right? Especially women of color. That's our experiences. Not to have to deal with that to the same extent, I want to say, right? I'm just incredibly blessed. So now I am fully into our family business, where we want to build family wealth in the areas of getting our social needs met, our physical needs met, our intellectual, creative, emotional, and spiritual needs met. That is what we are growing right now. We have a couple of extensions of that. We are going to be adding the fatherhood program during the first quarter of the year. We're going to be launching our website sometime in February. I'm real lucky that I'm able to work with my adult children and all the gifts and talents that they have. And then my husband is going to be joining me really soon, because he is going to be able to help other fathers as he walks through the arc of his life and his experiences.
That's awesome.
Yay.
That's awesome. Yay, Brenda. Brenda, this is what I want to ask you.
Okay.
With trauma, how many facets of trauma is there? From childhood? Like, how does that manifest? Childhood trauma. I guess here's a question. How does childhood trauma manifest in adults?
Oh wow, you know,
in their relationships.
unhealthy relationships. So let's go back to abandonment, right? So
Mm,
when you are conceived, there is an egg, and then there, you know, that is, you know, there, how we conceive the, you know, the male and the female, right?
yes.
And they both are very important in your development, right? Because that's how you were brought together. So your mom and your dad came together, and they're very important once you get here in your development. When
Mhm.
the father or the mother is not there, then you have these feelings and experiences of abandonment, right? It affects your self-image, your self-esteem, and your self-concept, what you think about myself. Because ultimately, you ask them yourself, why doesn't why doesn't my father love me enough to be here with me, right? You may not say that out your mouth, but consciously you're constantly questioning your self-worth because the people who were supposed to love you and care for you abandon you, right? So that's one way it shows up in unhealthy relationships.
Mhm.
Let's say that you were raised in an environment where, you know, there was domestic violence, right?
Mhm.
And for your family, that was normal. So your brain records that as normal activity, and you actually seek
Wow.
out those relationships that are normal for you. That's why, you know, you know, someone who, you know, is a victim or a survivor of domestic violence, they will find another, or they will find a perpetrator across a dark room. I am
Why? Why? What
telling
is that?
you, that behavior is normalized in our brain, so we seek it out continuously because it's normal. It's normal.
Wow. It's
It's
almost like they attract.
it is an attraction, right? And sometimes even before you know someone, that's a spiritual thing. So that's another podcast, dude. We can dig into the spiritual aspect of that, right?
Oh,
Other ways that it show up, you know, if you experience trauma, you know, alcoholism, drug addiction, you know, unhealthy relationships are all symptoms of the trauma that you experience.
mhm.
It's those things we use to forget,
Mhm.
right? It could be food,
Mhm.
you know, it could be sex, you know,
Cookies.
sex addictions, right? It,
Cookies.
you say what?
Cookies.
Yeah, sugar addiction.
Chocolate. I need help.
the
Addiction, you know.
the key is I don't want to. The one thing I'm reminded of is to state this. I don't want to act like I have achieved, right?
Okay.
Healing. Healing is a process,
Yes, it
right?
is.
I still struggle with some of the same things I struggled with as a teenager, right? I still
Mhm.
struggle with those things. So healing is a process, right? There were so many failures in my parenting, and let me tell you, my kids remind me all the time. My adult kids, we sit down and talk about everything. And they
That's
remind me
good.
of some of those missteps, right? I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm so sorry, y'all. I apologize.
That's good though, Brenda, that
Oh
you
yeah.
can openly have
Oh,
conversations surrounding the things that affected them, that they have
everything.
open relationship with you, that they can be honest with you. That's awesome.
Everything. I've always had that relationship with my kids. Now they didn't always tell me everything because, you know, some parents think, well, my kids will tell me everything. No, they won't. You better surround your kids with people who have the same values as you, and
Yeah.
then allow them to, you know, speak into your kids' life. You know, I was really blessed to have those kind of people. My sisters, you know, my brothers who were able,
Right.
kids are able to be who they were in front of them, where they couldn't be that way with me because they were afraid they would get in trouble, and they probably would be punished, right?
Mhm.
But anyway, we always had that door open for them to be open.
Mhm.
So into, you know, fast forward into their adulthood, there is no conversation that we cannot have. And I tell them all the time, and they know, I say, I don't care what you do. There's absolutely nothing you can do to make me stop loving you. And I mean absolutely nothing.
That's right.
I'm going to always love you, right? And you always have a home with me.
Mhm.
So I need we need our kids to understand that I'm protected. I'm responsible. I need to grow up and go out and do what I have to do, take care of myself and my family.
Right.
Knowing that I always have someone to rely on, there's a peace.
Peace in that.
There's a peace in that,
That's true. That
right?
is so true.
So yeah, man, I'm telling you, you got to come over sometime, Judy, because these conversations get deep.
Yeah. I want to come out there now because the weather I heard was 80 degrees.
But next week it'll be 40. So that's
Okay,
what it is.
I'll stay home. I'll stay
Yeah.
home. So
Yeah.
here's another thing I want to ask you, Brenda.
Okay.
Now we know the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We've identified the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We know that childhood trauma, based on the things that you share with us, goes into your adulthood. And if we all introspectively looked at ourselves, we can identify some of those traumas and those learned behaviors that we kind of carried in from our childhood in our current relationship, even in our marriages, in
Oh,
any
yes.
relationship, on the job, relationship, it's the same. We take those same behaviors. So now that we've identified it, we know what the problem is. The hard question is, how do we solve it? How do we address it? Is it what mechanism can we use as individual families or as individuals to begin that long healing process, so that, like I told you, what I learned when I got a whooping, I won't throw that stuff on Shavine and she put it on her children, and here the cycle continues with disciplining the wrong way, not being able to openly communicate. How do you stop that trauma at the door from the womb?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, we need to get educated. Right? I don't mean you have to go get a degree, but read a book. Listen, there's so many podcasts. The good news about today is everybody talking about trauma, even our men. Everybody's getting educated. They're becoming aware, and go and find a therapist. Talk to somebody who has the credentials to walk you through the healing process. Right? We have to do that. And I have to say, we are doing better. Our people are doing so much better. Men are doing so much better about seeking out therapy and self-healing, and seeking out ways to address and deal with their the father issue, their fatherhood abandonment issue, so they can be better fathers to their children. Women are learning, and how those the relationship with their mothers and their fathers affect their relationship with their partners. We are really growing in this area, and I'm so excited and grateful for that. So we need to get educated, and we need to go to therapy, right?
Get that therapy.
I want to say, for me, it began with my relationship with the Lord, right?
Amen.
Okay, so let me say, my heart was transformed, right? But then I had to go and transform my thinking. So it don't just start with I got saved, right?
Right. Okay.
It moved from I got saved to I have to gain the knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge.
No.
I had to gain the knowledge. I had to go and get counseling and go through therapy, or go, and do some self-work myself, right? And that's what we have to do, right? And we have to be real with ourselves. What I'm saying is, go and walk around our communities. Let me start there. Walk around some of our communities and tell me what you see.
My God.
And tell me where we can address these things, where we can look at community violence and how that affects the developing brain of a child, who then has to go into school and learn. And do you know that trauma affects a child's ability to learn? The part of their body that allows them to learn actually shuts down when there's trauma. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So they go to school and they cannot learn. Right? Deal with the physical, emotional, and sexual abuse in our families, in our communities. Let's stop pretending like this stuff don't happen. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. Physical and emotional neglect, substance abuse in the home, mental illness. Let's get help. Right? Stop pretending like it's okay for Uncle Leroy to be locked up in that room
with your baby. Girl, Uncle Leroy would be buried in the wall. Ooh, I didn't say that.
No, I'm talking about the uncle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Uncle Leroy ended up in a wall.
He been living with Big Mouth for 20 years because he can't go nowhere else, and everybody in denial that he's bipolar. Let's stop pretending
that he ain't bipolar.
Right? Let's look at the effects of imprisonment. No, so trauma and that trauma process may get them there, but prison itself, it's an extreme traumatic event, right? It's extreme, it's violent. I'm not even talking about prison anymore. Then let's talk about, understanding how domestic violence affects us and our children, right? And understand that if you are going to be in partnership with someone, you guys are going to bring a child into this world, be committed. Because if you're not there, it affects your children. That's for right. A lifetime. You don't come back from rejection from a parent. You'd struggle with that for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life.
I just had a conversation about that.
Yes.
And the person was so swayed by the way the parent treated them and rejected them that it went into a relationship with the person. And that person expressed to me how they were devastated when relationships end. You know what I'm saying? Because it feels, again, like that rejection from the parent. And so I think we all need to figure out how not to inflict that kind of pain on the people that we say that we love. And that's our own. Embrace your own. One of the things that I say all the time, if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm.
That's right.
We ought to be, like you said, that nature and that nurture. We ought to bring this thing together as a culture.
Yes.
First, get ourselves together. Don't worry about what's on the outside. Let's get ourselves together so that we can stop this violence. If we just came to the knowledge of dealing with ourselves and this trauma that's associated, it'll stop the behavior. If we allow, if we say it's okay, after I heard Love tell people about it's okay to tell a man to cry, I told Kevin, I read upstairs, I told Kevin, I said, babe, you can cry. He said, I cry all the time. Because I want you blowing up on me. You know? Right. But it's important for us to be able to communicate, have an open communication with your family, have that kind of dialogue with your children, with your husband, with your friends.
Yes.
The communication that we have with friends should be based on how do we get better? How do we take each other to the next level?
Well, and
that's important.
Be a friend. Okay, be a friend that somebody can share their story with and don't have to worry about you telling their business. And
that's right.
Judy, my circle tight.
I have so tight. I squeak when I walk.
Listen, I have friends like you, a couple of other women and men in my life women, and my man in my life where I feel like I can share everything, be transparent and be myself without judgment and not have to worry about if it's going to be repeated, right? Be a friend.
Yes.
That somebody can come to in a time of need, in a time of distress. They can share with you, this has happened to my child. What do I do?
And you're going to pray for them.
That's right. That's right.
You're going to pray with them.
No judgment and listen to them. So look, I just want to share because I want to share with you this. So let's go back to relationships. Yeah. So it's a kind of joke with me and my friends, right? Like I've been married for 30 years. My Bobby and I've been married for 30 years now. And I tell my friends, when I talk to the young people, I say, go to the family reunion. It's like, what you mean by go to the family reunion? I said, not only do you go to the family reunion, but you go twice, 2 years in a row.
Oh, right? Who you want to see?
Because the first year, all the family going to be on their best behavior. Go to your man's family reunion, go to your girlfriend's family reunion. The first year, they're going to be on their best behavior. The second year, you family, now you're going to see it all. Whatever you see there,
you better believe it.
Show up in your home. I don't care what he look like now. I don't know what he's saying. I don't care what it's
going to show up in the home.
Baby, let me tell you. So that's the title of my first book. Go to the family reunion twice. Don't nobody take it because it's on record that I said it. No, I claimed it.
That's your book.
Go to the family reunion twice. I know if my girlfriend Elaine is on here, she cracking up because we talk about this all the time.
That makes a lot of sense because you know what I tell you, I got a lot of guy friends. And when we talk, I say when they, have questions about, because, they'll never understand us and we'll never understand them. And so I always say to them, I say, if you want to find the woman of your dreams that have the values that you want, look at her mama.
Yes.
Kevin should have met my mama.
No, he probably would have ran. He probably would have ran away if he met your mama in her prime now.
Because
She has
we
no filter.
exemplified them. And that's so important, Brenda.
It
So
is.
I mean, it's so many relationships are it's so sacred.
Yeah.
It's so honorable.
Yeah.
It's so delicate.
It is. I think about, the journey of my 30-year marriage and how my husband, he literally is my bestest friend in the
Friend.
whole wide
Yeah,
world.
that's
And
my
I
cousin.
cherish him. I cherish him. I love him. I honor him. Now I wasn't always like that. I've always loved him,
Right.
but I
Like
haven't
him.
always honored him the way I do now.
Okay, that's me.
Right? I didn't.
Right.
So, I'm incredibly blessed in that relationship to have that love, to have that longevity, like what was shown to us, and for our kids to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beauty of our marriage and how we stuck it through.
True.
And they just laugh at us now, like, you guys. I said, we have a lot of fun. We don't have any kids.
Yeah, that's first.
And we have a good time together. We travel together, and for our grandkids to see that relationship, right? To see that their grandfather never raises his voice at their grandmother. And then they don't get to see their grandmother act like Rosalie, right? So they've seen that side of me.
Brenda, you blessed because I know Rosalie. Ooh, Jesus.
No, let me stop. Anyway,
Look, we got a
digress.
disclaimer up from the siblings. We got our disclaimer up. We know what James was like. We know what Jackie was like. Rose, we know what they were like. So
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
but the beautiful part was they raised very healthy minded children. I can honestly say that my parents and yours, we like that scripture say, train them up in the way in which they should go, and when they grow old, they will not depart. So although we went through the things, we know the difference. You know what I'm saying? If we apply it,
I think what our parents did for us, right? Like we both can talk about how we had those traumatic experiences in our family, in our extended family. But I think what my parents and your parents did for us is they encouraged us to always seek out knowledge and always seek out to be your very best.
Yeah.
Right. So when we came into the understanding that this may not be healthy for us, we sought out the knowledge and we changed our behavior in the trajectory of our family life. That's what they did for us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can do anything that you want to do.
They always encourage me. I remember, like you said, your career started early. My career doing taxes started at about 7 years old. Mm-hmm. I was such a curious child. I used to sit on my father's lap when he used to do taxes by pen. And I became like a numbers girl for the whole family, mm-hmm. And that started what I do today, yes. And I thank God my father didn't go to college. You know what I'm saying? He was a chef, but the wisdom that he had was impeccable. It was beyond years. I just thank God that he was selected to be my father, and my mom, very strict, very disciplined, didn't take no mess from nobody. If you look at her, mama, Jackie Dunwoody, baby.
Oh, I love me some Miss Dunwoody. We never had any problems.
And the more I look at her today, I be saying, oh, Jesus, please deliver me. Please deliver me. And the older she get, I'll be saying, oh God, please, Lord, don't let me be like that. But she's a beautiful person. She taught me sticking with something and being dedicated. My mother was dedicated. She taught us organization, administration, things like that. She had all those characters and the characteristics of both her and my father, like your mother and your father taught you business. I
Yes.
looked at your parents because the only one in the projects, nobody, y'all didn't live in the projects. So
Mhm.
I had something to look at. Y'all lived in a home. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
y'all had a business. Didn't nobody around there had no business.
Yeah.
Everybody was out there stealing food stamps. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So all I saw, but
Yeah.
I did have God did afford me the opportunity to be I'm a thinker. I'm always curious about things. So I always look and listen. I may not say a lot, but I always listen. I watched your parents. I remember y'all all those years ago downtown. The black family had a restaurant downtown. Come on now.
Yes. Yes.
Back in the 70s, 80s.
Right. Roosevelt and Wabash.
I
Rosalie.
remember that. And I was like,
Yes.
thinking to myself, man, how they do that, you know? But I was fortunate to be able to have, people that was in my circle,
Yes.
despite the things that I did, that I saw the positive and I moved toward the positive. So Brenda, just briefly tell us a little bit about what you do today and what services that you can provide for us.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, Family Education and Development Services vision is to cultivate a worldwide culture of nurturing, right? So, anything we nurture, it grows, and it develops, right? And it multiplies,
And then
right? And so, what I currently do is I provide a 3-day training to child welfare workers to deliver programs to parents that say, you get a drug charge, right? And you go to court, and the judge says, okay, you got to go to this parenting class because you neglected your children. You go to the parenting classes, and I'll drop the charges, right?
Mhm.
Or let's say that you have a child that's acting out and won't behave in school, and they say, well, we're going to recommend that you go to this class, to learn and understand child development, human development, right?
Mhm.
I train those people. I train therapists, counselors. I train school administrators, how to build nurturing communities in their schools, and reduce violence, helping children to understand, or helping teachers and children to manage their own behavior. So those are the trainings that I do. I also do help organizations to build their volunteer teams. I used to be over about 5,000 mentors in 26 countries. So I know how to build effective volunteer systems. I do program evaluations and assessments, audits. I let's see, gosh, it's so that's like an overview of what I do. Where I would like, what I want to be able to do next is to travel some more and to train in other countries. Like, I'm ready to get back on these planes and go all over the world and continue to share the knowledge and experience and gain. Like, I'm not always giving, right? This is a learning exchange, right?
That's
As
it.
I'm giving, I am receiving,
That's
right? So that's really, that's what I do, and that's where I'd like to go and
And
do.
how can people reach you, Brenda?
You can reach me at Feds ED Services. It's on the screen. My email address is fedsedservices@gmail.com. Or right now I have a Facebook page for Family Education and Development Services. You can request an appointment, schedule some time. Judy, also, I provided her with a link to all of my trainings that are scheduled throughout the end of March of 2023. And then also look for our website that's going to launch sometime in February. So, we're going to do a big launch party. As a matter of fact, Judy, I'm going to do it with you. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's done.
Yes.
It's done.
Yes.
That's all right, Brenda. Well,
Yes.
this has been truly, truly enlightening.
It has.
Thank God for you. Thank you for sharing to the masses. One last question, because as you was talking, I was like, by it, a childhood trauma affecting children, Do you bring your teaching into like daycare facilities for the
Oh,
instructors and stuff like that?
oh yeah, I used to train. I trained. Oh gosh, I actually trained thousands of early childhood education and care providers. Those who have home-based services,
Mm-hmm.
child care centers, directors of child care centers, the international intermediate school district. You know, I used to train teachers in ISDs in Michigan and also in Wisconsin, and in Illinois as well. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's where I started in the early care and education field. Then went into adults and said, you know what, need to come back to the teaching
Right.
parents, how
I
to.
want you to pencil me in. Part of what I do through JAS with business development, one of the things that dropped in my spirit was that to implement that teaching, that traumatic teaching in education. So let's work together, Brenda, so that we can see how we can implement that in early childhood education as well as CPS and all, in Georgia's or wherever. We can put that curriculum together and have it implemented within our educational systems.
Yeah,
Because right now, I did some work part time with CPS and baby girl, no curriculum, no
but
curriculum.
that's what I train child protective services workers as well. That the
Yeah.
curriculum I
So
use.
pencil me in so we can
Okay.
have a discussion surrounding that to see how we can put something together to bridge that loss that we're experiencing and that
Yeah,
traumatic to stop. We got to find a way to stop it,
yeah.
in order for us to raise healthy children.
Yeah, we
So
got to think about our children. We got to think about our legacy. We got to think about so much. And, I just ask that, that the scales be removed from our eyes. Because sometimes
yeah.
when you're in the midst of things, you don't see it until you're outside of it.
Mhm.
We don't think there's anything wrong with it because it's normal. But sometimes when you are able to step away from it and you actually look back and you see how we are, not intentionally, not, what I know? Not one person has a child and say, I want my son to be a drug addict.
Yeah.
Now, one woman says, "Oh, I want my daughter to be promiscuous and have all kind of boyfriends and relationships and 5, 6, 7, 8 kids." By
Mhm.
doing, now, one person has a child and anticipates that they are going to be failures,
Yeah.
right? That's not what they want for their
Right.
children. They really want the best for their children, right? I think that those of us who know better have a responsibility to pull alongside these folks and say, I am here to walk alongside you. No judgment.
No judgment.
Understand, right? Which is a good segue to how I want to end. Because I know listening to this conversation, that, I know that it brought up some memories for people, right?
Mm.
And, we want to blame our parents. And I would say it's not about it's their fault. I would say that our parents gave us the best that they could, right? If they knew better, they
They would have
probably
done
would have done better, right? So I do want to end with this. And I shared this with you, Judy. Can you open it up for me? And I want us to just walk through, I want you to be aware of this trauma, right? How it's affected you, right? But I also want you to know that your parents did the very best they could. And Judy, I can open it up if you can't. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
you go ahead, Brenda, because
All right, I'm going to share it. I got to turn on.
here it for us.
Uh, that your parents did the very best they could, right? And
Mhm.
you just have to forgive them, right? Because the forgiveness of your parents, not forgetting, right? Especially if it was extreme traumatic, right? Things that are so horrific we don't even hardly talk about it,
Right.
right? But forgive and release them for yourself and for your own growth.
Mhm. And
So,
let me kind of, while you pulling that together, Brenda, that is such an important topic with parents, because a lot of times when we do identify some of the traumas that was associated with us, and if we can identify the parent as being the one that inflicted it upon us, say your parent was a drug addict,
mm-hmm,
sometimes we tend to hold people hostage for their mistakes, and their
mm-hmm,
parent could have rehabbed and
Mm-hmm.
got their lives together, but then they have all the guilt and the shame of what they've been through. And here comes the trauma. That's another traumatic event on
Mm-hmm.
the parent. And then the relationship can't be a cohesive relationship because not only are the children holding the parents hostage, the parents is holding themselves hostage. So
Mm-hmm.
that forgiveness, even in the word of God, forgive, to let go of those things that are in the past so that you can grow as it relates to forgiveness. And when you forgive somebody, people can do you any kind of harm. The scriptures tell us that we have to be able to forgive people regardless to what they do to us.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive them so that forgiveness ain't for the person, it's for you.
It really is, right? So you can free up some space in your spirit and your soul,
That's
right? That you're holding on to with that person in that space, right?
yeah.
So I think someone posted this on my Instagram, and I took it. I said I gotta get this. It says this: you may want to forgive your parents for raising you through their own unresolved trauma,
Wow.
not being able to understand you because they did not have the capacity to, not being able to teach you certain skills as nobody taught them, being emotionally unavailable as their parents were emotionally unavailable to them, doing the best they could with what they knew and had, following cultural norms that they were surrounded with, and raising you through their own struggles, worries, pains, and fears. That
Mhm.
came from the Mind Journal, right?
Mm.
So, at the end of the day, this again is about the cycle of trauma, right? That your parents experienced as they were trying to parent you and struggling through that trauma themselves. That was unaddressed, right?
Mm.
That helps us to understand the why, so then we could begin the process of that healing. Okay.
Wow, Brenda.
I so thank you for this opportunity, Judy. This has been good
That,
for me.
this has been amazing because when you were just saying about the forgiveness of parents, I think about how I know a lot of people, grew up in parents households where parents drank,
Mm-hmm.
and so that spirit, you don't know. I always ask myself, well, what made a person, consume something so much so that it consumed them? So
Mm-hmm.
what makes you drink where it consumes you and you become what they consider, addicted to a substance
Mm-hmm.
that that consumes you, that takes you off of who you are. And a lot of times people, we medicate ourselves because we're repressing, like you said, those traumas. And if we can look at it like that as it relates to parenting and siblings or whatever, what is that person hiding from? And as a nurturer, I help to identify with that person. What is, you see a person that's an alcoholic, don't just call them off as an alcoholic. Your responsibility is, if you see somebody down, is to pick them up. So identify with that person, create a cohesive relationship with the person to find out where that trauma is. Once that person identifies with that trauma, that's the first step to real healing, because
Absolutely.
identification helps you to be able to overcome whatever adversity that you cause yourself to, eat a cookie or whatever you do to harm yourself, to
Yeah,
bring harm, is self harm. That's what it is. It's just you're harming yourself. We know too much of anything ain't good for you.
absolutely.
So if I can say, hey Brenda, I see you taking too many drinks, and I have a relationship with you, I can say to you,
Mm,
Brenda, don't, I can't tell you what to do. You're an adult, but sis, what's going on with you? What
that's right.
makes you,
I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned
I'm
about your health.
concerned about you. What makes you pick up a piece of alcohol or a crack cocaine pipe? Or what makes you sell your body? What makes you be so promiscuous with men? What is causing this pain? And then,
Mhm.
like you said, nurture the person, And I believe if each family, because it's millions and trillions and billions of people on the planet that's going through the same thing, if each family just handled their own family, that would be healing that will spread worldwide, and if we just be responsible to deal with the traumas that's associated with our families, the intimate part, because if you get that family in order, then we're equipped to help those that's outside of the family, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Goes internal first, then external.
Exactly.
I had
So
to recognize my own before I can truly. Now, people get out here with trauma, right? And always trying to help somebody. But what happens is they actually sometimes become perpetrators too, because they have those unresolved issues. So that's podcast number 2.
wow.
Church.
Ooh, Brenda. I'm gonna have to take a drink on that one too. Because baby, that's ooh, I want to get on here and just help people. That's why God had me to create this forum where we can have real life conversations that edify, encourage, and empower people.
Absolutely.
And that's if we've done that, job well done.
Absolutely. And if we didn't, I had so much fun with my friend from many years ago. I mean, if nothing else happened.
Yes, if nothing else happened.
If my kids are listening, I was like, Mom, just keep on talking. We both talk. We enjoy it. We love God. We love God's people. We're hardworking, ethical women. We love our families. We love our communities. We see the value in all things that are living.
So much value in us.
Oh my gosh. So it's incredible. So thank you for having me on, Judy. And I wish you well. And I look forward to coming back again.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you for introducing me to the one that changed my life.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, I wasn't on here in the beginning. Brenda was the one that had one of 3. He had to send 3 people after me. I was a shepherd for the devil. But he had to send you, and so Brenda, I promise you, it's been since December 24th, 1989.
Wow.
89 since I gave my life over to the Most High. My life has not been the same.
Oh my gosh! And if they need to read your bio to really see.
Yeah, I think one day I'm gonna have you on here to talk to me.
You know what? I mean, if you need to look at your bio to see how God can snatch you out of your mess and put you on an original path.
Yeah.
True restoration. Put you on an original path that He had.
Won't He do it?
Until you took a little detour, right?
Yeah. I took a big detour.
Share your bio.
I took a big detour.
Yeah, you did.
In my life, and it's amazing, and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful to the Most High for every day that I wake up, because He didn't have to do it. I know that I should have been sleeping in my grave.
Yes.
But He found favor, and this is why I give so much of my life to others. This is why I have to give, because you gave me so much. I have to give. My life is predicated on giving. And whatever I can do to acknowledge God in my life, I have to do it. I can't live if I don't do it.
Yes.
I knew when I gave my life over to the Most High, I knew I couldn't go back. If I would have been instantly killed, enemy would have instantly took my life. I couldn't run back. I never went back. Since I turned my life over to the Most High, I never turned back.
Yes. Yes.
I'm a ride or die.
Yeah. Look, and the other thing that I want to say is, you talk about how God used me to plant that seed for you to choose Him, right?
Yeah.
To show you how we always talk about reaping and sowing, right? And how things are cyclical and how they come back to you. There have been so many times over the course of what you said, 89, what's that, 90, 20 22, 23 years of salvation.
89 to 99 to 2009. That's almost 30
30.
years, Brenda.
Oh my God, my math is off. Anyway.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah, I've been walking with him over
course,
30
those
years.
30 years where you say I planted that seed, and I appreciate you acknowledging that. But you know how many times you have pulled me out of some dark places just through conversations and praying
Hmm.
for me. That's how that works, you know. It's how it
Hmm.
works.
My God.
So that seed that was planted has grown,
I'm your harvest.
and you are my harvest, right?
I'm
And I get to utilize my harvest. My harvest is sustenance for me,
yeah.
right? And so I appreciate you acknowledging that all the time.
Let's not get too emotional.
Okay,
I'm
you know
just that wasn't drama though. That was good. That was love. I'm so every time I just I have to tell somebody
yes,
because you allow God to use you. And I pray that anybody that listen, allow God to use you because you don't know the troubles, the struggles, or the trauma that a person is in. You don't know when you're walking past somebody if a smile will change them from jumping off a bridge or putting a bullet in their head. So
mm,
always be available for God to use you. So this ends, right, Brenda?
yeah. It's eight. Well, 7:30 your time. 8:35. What? 8:30. 7:35.
Right, right. This
Yeah.
has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I thank and praise God for you once again. JAS from the projects to the penthouse. I mean, y'all better get ready for these conversations that we're going to have. These conversations are designed and developed to uplift, encourage, and empower you. It's
Yeah.
designed to change your mind. The Bible teaches us that we are to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, that those old things that are passed away, behold, he said, all things gonna become new. I'm new. So I want you guys to know the same thing that God told me. If he did it for me, he can do it for you. So each one teach one, right, Brenda?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Each one teach one. And that's what this is for. So next week, I want to give y'all a heads up because
Yeah.
it's a learning form, Brenda. We want to learn. You
Yeah.
know, you can't keep growing if you can't learn. And what you shared with us today was powerful
Yeah.
because I began to start introspecting. Wow, that's what my behavior. You know, you don't think of those things on a daily basis.
You know what? You remind me. There's a book out called "The Body Keeps Score." That's one of the books I know that's really really good. The
It's
body
called The Body Keeps Score.
body keeps score. That's some place where people can begin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's so much information out here. I know that a lot of us do a lot of self-help stuff, so that's one place to begin just to gain the knowledge. But if you truly need some help in healing, you need to go to therapy. You just do. You just
That
do.
is so true.
You just do.
When
Right.
when when I buried my siblings 7 months apart last year,
Mm,
it was so traumatic for me, Brenda. I'm just at a point, tears still come to my eyes when I think about it. But I had to go to therapy. I had to get somebody to talk to because I was self-destructing.
mm-hmm.
One of the things that helped me is that the therapist said, and I'm gonna just be transparent, I had locks down to my back and I cut them all off. And that helped me to, I don't know how it did, and I don't understand that. Maybe off record, you can help me to understand that. But the therapist was saying to me that that was the only thing that I could control. I couldn't control losing and Cookie and Wayne. I was able to control me, so I took what I had. That's why y'all see me rocking hats. I got sister locks under here though. I'm still rocking. But don't get it twisted. Sister still fries. She rocking sister locks. But anyway, it ain't down my back yet, so y'all don't get to see my hair. So
Yeah.
anyway, therapy is so important. And if you can't afford therapists, the Bible says that you are to go to the wise. You
Mhm.
are to go to someone that you can trust, like Brenda said, that you make a friend. that you can trust, that you can say something to. They're not going to share your information. Each one teach one. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody needs an outlet. You can't bottle that stuff in and think when it come time you ain't gonna blow up.
Because you will.
Because you will. So Brenda, hugs. Take my hug. Take my hug. But next week, y'all, the conversation.
Yeah, tell them about the next
week. So next week's conversation is about business. Everybody know that JAS Enterprise, we do business development, and I do certifications for businesses to help businesses to get business. So minority certifications is important for our culture, our community. And so what we want to teach next week, and all you guys, I'm going to send it out. We're going to teach you all how to get your certification so that you can win the bid. There's so much money on the table for our communities, but because we refuse to get our businesses set up properly, utilize the resources that we have, we don't have the money. The money is out there for us. In this society today, Pritzker just here in Illinois just put $54 billion on the table for MPEs, for WBs, DBEs, for minority certification. So come on here so you can learn how to get your business certified so you can qualify for these contracts, any kind of contracts in any line of work that you're in. There's federal money, there's state money, there's city money, there's county money, and we want to teach you how. So my next guest will be on here and we'll be having that conversation. So tune in. Thank you guys for listening. I know we went a little over, but grace and peace. My goddaughter on here, Julia, Mother Ann, say, Brenda, you are resilient. We thank you, Brenda.
Elaine joined. She said she got that you had limited the comments. She was trying to comment on the podcast.
Tell Miss Elaine it wasn't personal.
She knows it wasn't personal.
Yeah, it wasn't personal because it says some destination. I don't know how I limited the y'all. I'm learning this thing, so charge it to my head and not to my heart.
So between now and next week, we got to figure out what's going on, because I want to invite a lot of people to that one, because I know a lot of women. Good. Let me be clear. Great business women, right? Who would like to have that information. So
absolutely,
send it to me so I can broadcast.
So I'll send invites out like I did.
Okay,
Brenda, y'all stick on. Don't go nowhere. I want y'all to hear what I wrote.
Yes.
Y'all got to hear this and listen to it because it's word. Y'all hear it? Hold on. 1 second. Listen to this, y'all. King of Love, we're moving on high. I have a message from the King of Love. Lessons, degrees, melodies sent from above. The King of Love is sent to teach. Words of wisdom are within your reach. Knowledge is a deep understanding of the wisdom of self without being demanding. The words he speaks, the melody he sings, let you know in the door he is truly a king. Disregard the appearance, seek to reach within, and embrace the King of Love without fear of sin. His life is dramatic, his path full of gold. The King of Love will never grow old. The words make you smile, the touch makes you blush. The seriousness of it all sends your mind in a rush. Sisters, brothers, all families, you don't hear him calling? You must be deaf, because we seem to be falling from the highest heights where we were meant to be. His music soothes and his words relieves. Listen close, pay attention. Let him take you to another dimension. When you feel the touch, please don't rush. Relax, open your mind and learn to trust. Look within to see who you truly are, and let the King of Love be your guiding star. Slow it down, pause to think. All the lies you've been told will only make you sink. Learn to ask, what's the reason? Behind the mask, there's always a season. To tell the truth, the King of Love has a mystical tool. He'll wrap up your mind and take you to school. Try to focus on your task at hand, and then you will overstand. hate, greed, lust are only a few of your enemies at hand. Learn to identify the enemy, then learn about the King of Love. You'll then realize he was sent from above. The King of Love is a trusted friend. He will show you how to reach within. Once you look in and see the ugly heads, don't be afraid to confront a rise from the dead. Change is growth, and it is needed. To follow the path of the King of Love, the words must be heeded. Listen to the melody of your soul's delights. Don't allow inner turmoil to win your fight. Follow the flow as the change takes place. There's room for all in the King of Love space. Peace and blessings from the University of Love, and most high praises to the one who is above. He sits high and he looks low, and definitely he wants you to grow. This is why the King of Love is just a sign that the most high dwelling is in your mind. So we moving on up. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining. We moving on up. I have a message